I moved into the old apartment on Crestwood Lane about 3 months ago. It was nothing special, just a small, two-bedroom unit on the second floor of a brick building that smelled faintly of mildew and old cigarette smoke. The rent was cheap, which is why I took it without hesitation, even though my gut told me there was something off about the place. The first week was uneventful, just the usual settling in, unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, figuring out where the nearest grocery store was. But by the second week, little things started happening. Little noises, little moments that didn't quite fit. At first, I shrugged them off. A creak here, a thump there. Old buildings make noise, right? But then it became more persistent. At night, when I tried to sleep, I could hear faint whispers. Not full words, just the sound of someone breathing and murmuring. I'd freeze in bed, straining to catch it, but the room was empty. I'd tell myself it was the pipes or the wind outside. I'd even laugh to myself, imagining a ghost complaining about its own life story. It was harmless at first. Then the walls started acting weird. I'd be sitting in the living room, laptop on my knees, watching some late-night video, when I'd feel the vibration. Not from my electronics, not from the radiator, but like someone tapping the walls from the other side. Soft, deliberate, not random settling noises, but methodical taps. At first, I tried to ignore it. I put it down to neighbors. The building was old, and I had no idea who lived around me. But every time I got close to sleep, the tapping would start again. Always in the dead hours, between 2 and 3 a.m., never earlier, never later. One night, I was brushing my teeth when I heard a whisper from the kitchen. I froze, toothbrush halfway out of my mouth. "Hello," I called, my voice cracking. Nothing. Just a faint sound of scraping behind the walls, like fingernails dragging over plaster. My pulse spiked. I blinked, and then I saw it, or I thought I saw it. Across the kitchen, just past the doorway, a shadow flickered, so fast I couldn't be sure it was real. My rational mind screamed, light reflection, imagination, but a part of me knew better. Something was here, watching, waiting. I started noticing patterns. The whispers weren't random. They came in bursts, often repeating certain sounds. It was always soft, always just on the edge of understanding, like someone or something was trying to speak without words. I started recording the noises with my phone, hoping to make sense of them. But every time I listened, the files were corrupted, or the whispering sounded different, almost mocking. And the tapping, the tapping grew louder, faster, almost like Morse code. Sometimes I would place my hand on the wall, try and feel the rhythm, but there was nothing, no vibration, no pulse, just emptiness. Sleep became impossible. I'd lie in bed, heart hammering, waiting for the scratching, the whispers, the soft tapping. I started locking my doors, bolting the windows, even though I was alone on the second floor. But the sense of being watched never left me. It was in the corners, in the shadows that stretched too long, in the reflections on the walls when the lights flickered. And then I began seeing faces. Not full faces, just glimpses, eyes, pale and unblinking, staring from the walls. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. Stress, lack of sleep, whatever. But every time I turned toward the wall, the eyes were gone. Just blank plaster, just a dull beige of paint. But the feeling persisted, heavy in my chest, suffocating. I tried talking to people about it. My friends laugh it off. Old building, bro, paranormal? Come on. But I knew it wasn't my imagination. One night, I was too terrified to stay in my bedroom, so I took a flashlight and explored the apartment. The whispers followed me, not from behind walls, but from inside them. I pressed my ear to the kitchen wall, and the tapping was louder now, frantic, almost like a heartbeat. Then I heard it clearly. My name. I pulled back, stumbling into the living room, heart in my throat. "Who's there?" I screamed. Silence. Just silence. The next week, things escalated. I woke up to scratches on my walls, long, deep, fresh scratches that weren't there before. They looked clawed, like someone or something had tried to tear its way through. The whispering became voices, overlapping, urgent, chaotic. Sometimes I swore I could understand them, like they were giving instructions, counting down, planning. And the shadows, they moved independently. Across the living room, a dark smear would stretch along the floor and walls, sometimes taking shapes almost human but distorted, with limbs bending wrong, faces smeared and blank. I didn't leave the apartment. I couldn't. Something had me trapped. Every time I considered walking out, the walls would pulse, the whispers would rise, and the shadows would shift closer. One night, I felt behind me, cold, watching. I spun around, nothing, but my reflection in the hallway mirror moved differently. My reflection grinned. And then the lights went out. I don't remember how long I was in darkness. Hours? Days? Time lost meaning. The whispers became a roar, 1,000 voices speaking at once. I screamed, but no sound came out. The shadows merged into a wall of darkness, pressing against me from every side. And then silence. When I woke, I was lying on the kitchen floor. Morning light filtered weakly through the blinds. The scratches were gone. The tapping stopped. The whispers were gone. I convinced myself it was over. I even started laughing weakly at my own paranoia. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe the apartment was just old. But it wasn't over. I found the first set of scratches on the wall the next night. And this time, they spelled something. My name. I'm still here, lying awake in the dark, listening, waiting. They've stopped the scratching for now. But I know it's only a matter of time. And I know, without a shadow of doubt, that they're still watching. Always. Through the walls, through the floor, through the ceiling. Watching me. And tonight, I swear I saw a hand reach through the wall. When I moved back to my childhood home after my mother passed, I told myself it was temporary, just until I sold the place. The house sat on the edge of a small Pennsylvania town, surrounded by woods so thick you could barely see the sky through the trees. I hadn't lived there since I was 15, and coming back felt strange. Everything smelled faintly of damp wood and dust. The wallpaper was peeling, and the air carried that particular scent of old, forgotten years. It was just me now. My mom had left me the house, and after the funeral, there was no one else. My father had died when I was 8, and my older brother disappeared when I was 12. No one ever found him. They said he probably ran away. But I never believed that. The first week was mostly cleaning, airing out the rooms, scrubbing the mold off the bathroom tiles, throwing away boxes of things Mom had hoarded over the years. It was exhausting, but it kept my mind off everything. The only thing that really bothered me was the noise. At night, when I turned off the TV and lay in bed, I could hear faint thumps beneath the floorboards, like something moving. Rats, maybe. The house was old, but the sound wasn't the random scurry of small animals. It was heavier, slower, like footsteps. At first, I ignored it, but then on the fourth night, I woke around 2:30 a.m. to the sound of something dragging along the floorboards under my bed. It wasn't subtle. It was loud enough that the wooden planks creaked in protest. My entire body went cold. I turned on the lamp. The noise stopped instantly. I waited for a minute, my heart pounding. Then, slowly, I leaned down and peeked under the bed. Nothing, just a dusty floor and a few old socks. But when I sat back up, I swear I felt the floor move beneath me, just slightly, like a slow, subtle breathing. The next morning, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the house was shifting. Maybe the pipes. I was sleep-deprived, stressed. It made sense. Still, I couldn't shake it. That night, I stayed up late scrolling on my phone, trying to keep my mind distracted. Around 1 a.m., the noise came again. Thump, thump, then a dragging sound, like something crawling under the floor. This time, I grabbed a flashlight and followed the sound into the hallway. The floorboards trembled faintly beneath my feet, as if something was moving under the wood, following me. I shone the light down, and for a brief second, I thought I saw movement, like a ripple running through the boards. I froze. The sound stopped again. Then I heard it, faint, muffled, but unmistakable. A voice, a whisper from below. It was saying my name. The basement door had been sealed shut for years, ever since my brother disappeared. I remembered my mother yelling at me whenever I went near it. She used to say it wasn't safe, that the foundation was unstable, that there were things down there I shouldn't disturb. Now, staring at that door, I understood her fear. The handle was cold and rusty. When I turned it, it groaned in protest. The air that came out was thick and stale, like something had been trapped for decades. I clicked on the flashlight and stepped down. The wooden stairs creaked under my weight, and a fine layer of dust floated in the beam of light. The basement smelled like damp earth. I swept the light across the floor, just old boxes, broken furniture, and spider webs. But then I noticed something odd. A section of the dirt floor near the back wall was uneven, like it had been disturbed recently. I walked over and knelt down. The soil was soft. Someone, or something, had dug there, and then, from directly beneath my knees, came a soft tapping. I stumbled back, my flashlight shaking. The tapping turned into scratching, frantic and desperate. I could hear breathing, ragged, gasping breathing. I ran back upstairs and slammed the door shut. My heart was in my throat. That night, I barely slept. I tried to tell myself I'd imagined it, that it was a trapped animal or something, but deep down, I knew better. The sound wasn't random. It was trying to get my attention. The next morning, I went into town and bought a small motion detector camera, the kind hunters use. I set it up in the basement facing the dug-up area, then went about my day. When I checked the footage that night, the battery had died around 2 a.m. But before that, there were 5 minutes of footage I'll never forget. At first, nothing. Just a dark, empty basement. Then, a faint movement near the dirt patch. The soil began to shift. Slowly, something pushed its way up from underneath. A hand. Thin. Pale. Almost translucent. I stopped the video. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone. That night, I slept in the living room with all the lights on. But around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of something creaking in the hallway. Slow, deliberate steps coming from the direction of the basement door. I held my breath. The steps stopped outside the living room. The doorknob turned. And then silence. The next morning, I found the basement door wide open. The air coming from below was colder now, and the smell was stronger, a sour, rotting odor. I couldn't bring myself to go down there again. I called the local police, told them I thought someone was living under my house. They checked the basement and found nothing. No holes, no tracks, no sign of forced entry. They said it was probably animals. Told me to get pest control. But that didn't explain the whispering or the footsteps. Over the next few days, the sound got louder, more frequent. Sometimes I'd hear 2 sets of footsteps moving in sync beneath the floorboards. Sometimes when I looked down, I could see faint shapes shifting beneath the planks, like something crawling just out of sight. I barely ate, barely slept. I started seeing things, shadows in the corners, faces behind the curtains. My reflection in the window began moving differently, lagging behind. Once, when I blinked, I swear I saw a figure crouched behind me, pale skin, wide grin, but when I turned, there was nothing. The whispering got worse, closer. It stopped sounding like words and started sounding like breathing. Sometimes I'd wake up and hear it right beside my ear. I tried to leave, packed my car, grabbed my bag, and ran outside. But as I was pulling out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw something standing in the upstairs window, watching me. It looked like my brother. I slammed the brakes. When I looked back, he was gone. I didn't go back inside until daylight. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I went upstairs to my old bedroom, the one my brother used to share with me. The door was open. Inside, the floorboards had been pulled up, and beneath them, a tunnel. The air coming out of it was foul, humid, and wrong. I could see it stretching into darkness, deeper than the house should allow. My flashlight barely reached 10 feet in, but I saw something. A shape. It was crouched, facing away from me, its back arched and twitching. Its skin looked stretched, gray and damp, like something half decomposed. Then it turned its head. It wasn't my brother. Its eyes were black, empty sockets. Its mouth opened too wide, the jaw splitting almost to the ears. And then it started crawling toward me. I ran. I ran out of that house and didn't stop until I reached the road. I called the police again, hysterical, trying to explain what I saw. They went back, searched the house top to bottom, and found nothing. No tunnel, no creature, not even a sign the floorboards had been moved. They said the house was old. It started the night I left work late. I was an ordinary office worker. Nothing unusual about me. Nothing remarkable about my life. I stayed at my desk until nearly midnight, finishing a report that my boss had insisted was urgent. The streets outside were empty, lit only by the occasional streetlight, the kind that flickered like they couldn't decide whether to stay on. I walked quickly to my car, keys clutched tight, adrenaline making me jittery. I didn't notice it at first. Just a flicker, a flash in the corner of my eye as I passed a darkened shop window. A reflection, maybe. My mind, exhausted, told me it was nothing. But the feeling stuck with me as I drove home. I lived in a small apartment on the third floor of a building just outside the city center. The hallway smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and old smoke, but it was quiet. When I opened my door, I felt watched, not the usual. I'm alone in my apartment, sort of quiet, but something heavier, oppressive. I shook it off and went about my night, shower, dinner, a few episodes of some sitcom I didn't even like. The first sign something was wrong came when I looked in the bathroom mirror. At first, I didn't notice. My reflection looked normal, pale, tired, the same face I'd always had. But then I blinked, and my reflection didn't. It just stared, frozen, watching me. And when I leaned closer, squinting, I realized the eyes weren't mine. They were darker, wider. There was a wrongness in the way the mouth moved. My mouth, but not, mimicking subtly, almost perfectly, but wrong. I laughed nervously, shaking my head. Must be exhaustion, I told myself. Go to bed, get some sleep. That night, sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the reflection standing behind me in the darkened bathroom, always watching, always smiling. I started avoiding mirrors, avoiding any reflective surface. My phone screen, the windows, the TV, anything that could capture a reflection. It was exhausting, but I thought it would help. It didn't. A week later, I noticed something disturbing. The reflection wasn't staying put. I came home from work, set my keys on the counter, and froze. In the kitchen window, a dark figure stood behind me, my own shape but wrong. Longer limbs, too tall, eyes that glimmered faintly in the dim light. I spun around. Nothing, just the empty apartment. When I turned back, it was still there. It followed me everywhere. Not physically. It stayed in the reflections, in the corners, in the periphery of my vision, but it moved independently. Smiling, waiting. I tried telling friends. I showed them pictures of myself in mirrors, asking them to compare reflections. Nothing. Always my reflection. Normal. They told me I was stressed, sleep-deprived, imagining things. But I wasn't imagining the shadows. The whispering started soon after. Low, soft, almost seductive, curling around my ears when I was alone, calling my name, laughing quietly, mimicking my voice sometimes, but slightly off, always taunting, always patient. It started small. A whisper when I walked past the kitchen, a movement in the hallway mirror. Then my reflection started stepping out of line, slightly behind, slightly ahead, always off. At first, I could still catch it with a quick glance. But then, one evening, I looked at my reflection in the living room window, and it didn't move at all while I did. I raised my hand. The reflection did nothing, and then it smiled. Panic set in. I started covering mirrors with blankets, aluminum foil, anything I could find. The apartment felt smaller and smaller. Shadows seemed to gather in corners. The whispering grew louder at night, almost a roar inside my skull. My reflection, no, the thing, began appearing where it shouldn't, behind me in the hallway, crouched in my bedroom doorway. I stopped going outside. I stopped leaving the apartment altogether. Food deliveries piled up. the faint stench of rot, and something worse seeped into the cracks of the window. I stopped answering calls. My phone vibrated constantly, but I didn't look. One night, I thought I'd escaped. I turned off all lights, lay in bed, wrapped myself in blankets. I convinced myself the reflection was gone. My eyelids grew heavy. Sleep was merciful. Until I woke. The moonlight through the blinds was just enough to see it. My reflection, crouched on the ceiling, head tilted at an impossible angle, smiling, waiting. I screamed. The sound was muffled by the blankets. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The thing dropped silently to the floor, perfectly mimicking my weightless panic. It moved toward me, slow and deliberate. I pressed my hands over my eyes, but the darkness didn't help. I felt it breathe against my neck. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. I tried to leave the apartment, packed my bag, ran down 3 flights of stairs, out into the street. But when I looked back, the lights in my window flickered, and there it was, standing in my apartment, looking out at me through the glass. I didn't stop running. I didn't turn around. I got into a cheap motel across town. The first night, I locked every door, every window, every possible entry point. I refused to look into a mirror. It followed. I could hear the whispering through the walls. I could see it behind the darkened TV screen, behind the tinted windows of the motel. It never spoke in words anymore, just laughed, mocked me. It didn't need mirrors. It was everywhere, always there. A week later, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a mirror, small, handheld, nothing else. I didn't open it. I didn't touch it. I left it on the table. But that night, I heard the faint tapping of glass against glass. My eyes flew open. The mirror was on the floor, cracked. And in the cracks, I saw it, not my reflection. Something else. Something grinning. Waiting. Its head tilted unnaturally. Eyes hollow black. Limbs bent in impossible angles. And it whispered my name. I threw the mirror against the wall. It didn't break. The cracks spread, forming a network of tiny, shifting faces that seemed to move on their own. The next day, I tried to leave again. Packed my bags. Car was ready, but when I went to the lobby, the receptionist wasn't there. Instead, the reflection of the lobby desk stared at me. The reflection moved independently, smiled, and whispered. I drove, I don't know how far, hours, days. It followed, always. My reflection, or whatever it is, exists beyond glass, beyond any surface. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't rest. And now here I am, sitting in a dim motel room, lights off, the door locked. I see it in every shiny surface. My own face, staring back, grinning when I don't. Sometimes it mimics me perfectly. Sometimes it does things I never would. I can't escape. And tonight, it's standing right behind me in the dark. I can feel its breath on my neck, its hands on my shoulders. I can't see it directly. I know if I turn around, I'll meet those hollow black eyes. And yet, I know it's learning, watching, waiting for me to move. I don't know how it got out of reflection, or if it's always been outside me, waiting. But one thing is certain, it isn't going away. And I don't know how long I have before it takes my place entirely.